Hey everybody, welcome to week 3. We are about halfway through the course already, which is kind of hard to believe. This week we are shifting a little bit from fantasy to science fiction. So with a lot of the classic fantasy that we looked at, I'm sure that some of the classic sci-fi is going to seem also like you've read it before, even if you know you haven't. And that's because so much modern sci-fi is derivative of those classics. They're famous for a reason. They did it first. Everything after that almost had to follow suit just to get established in the genre, and then it became standard. So there are lots of similarities that you're probably going to pick up on. Like fantasy, sci-fi usually has an element of mythology in it, but as opposed to fantasy's primary mythology, which explains the origins of worlds, sci-fi actually takes its foundation from cosmology, which is the mythology that explains issues of life, death, the ordering of the universe, and where people fit into it. So, as some of you have figured out already, there's also a primary what-if question built into sci-fi, and really that's at the core of most fiction anyway, so that should come as no surprise. But with sci-fi especially, authors are free to speculate about more things since they're not as bound by the rules of current technology or reality. So what if we could travel to other planets? What if there are aliens? Sci-fi authors get to play around and have fun answering those kinds of what-if questions, but what they're also doing is examining elements of the human condition, social issues, religion, all sorts of topics that are relevant to modern society today. You may have also noticed that sci-fi tends to draw strongly from actual technological advancements that are happening at the time a story is written. So, for example, when pulp magazines and penny dreadfuls were popular, just a few of the tech inventions that happened around the same time were the invention of the sewing machine, propellers, revolvers, the telegraph machine and Morse code, dishwashers, bicycles, modern typewriters, just a ton of other things that we take for granted today. And the literature reflects that progress, usually with that basic what-if question at the heart of it. So because of the speed that we were getting these new inventions, it's really no wonder at all that a lot of the literature took a look at that. So if a sewing machine, for example, was suddenly a reality and you no longer had to sew things by hand, what kinds of concerns do you think people might have had? Probably they're pretty similar to what people think of today and their concerns about, say, the rise of automated manufacturing. Is a machine going to replace me at my job? What will be automated next? Are we going to just have everything handed to us and we don't have to work anymore or learn anything new? What will happen if that's the case? It's going to be the end of the world. Probably sounds pretty familiar. So all of this technology started in the mid-1800s with the Industrial Revolution, and it carried on well into the 20th century. So sci-fi literature started mixing scientific romance with the earliest space operas. Sci-fi romance is what Pulp Fiction and Penny Dreadfuls published. It's not actually romance that's set in space. And space operas are big, crazy adventures set in outer space. So Star Trek or Star Wars or Firefly are all really good examples of space operas. So for the reading this week, I'd like for you to try to pick out that central what-if question each story poses. Some things to think about would be, what are the authors trying to figure out? What was happening in society when the story was written? What do we learn about ourselves from the story? Any other kinds of questions like that. And as always, just let me know if you have any questions, and you can do so by posting into the questions thread or by sending me a private message. Thanks, and I'll see you all in class.